All right. I want to welcome everyone to the second day of the Mountain Moot. We have our first presentation starting today. We have Annalise, who is going to be presenting on Inside Your Student's Brain. So take it away.
Thank you, Jeff. Hi, everyone. So welcome to this session by WooClap, Inside Your Student's Brain. And before we dive in, I have two disclaimers to share. So the first is that you'll be using your smartphones in this session, so keep them handy if they're not already. And the second disclaimer is that you'll see a lot of brain images that I'm going to reference lots of scientific studies about the brain also. But me, myself, I'm not a brain specialist. I'm not a neuroscientist either. But at WooClap, we do work with these specialists to build our products. So I want you to know that before we dive in. Now that I've said a little bit more about myself, at least you know that I'm not a brain specialist, right? And that I work for WooClap. I'd like to know more about you, since I don't have any idea to whom I'm specifically talking to. So please connect yourself to this event by scanning the QR code you see on the screen, or by going to wooclap.com/mountainmoots. And I can see that already 2 persons are connected. So I'm going to wait a little bit more for you guys to connect yourself to the event. If there would be anyone that is connecting at a later stage, don't worry, you will still be able to see the URL on the screen. So I see we're already 7. Let's wait a little bit more. And then we can dive in with some ice-breaking questions. 7 is standing there, so let's just start. Okay, so I really like to know where you guys are all from. So please, very interesting. All right, Billings, Montana, Dillon, Montana, Missoula, Montana, Boise, Idaho. Okay, very interesting. Tucson, Arizona. Hello. Helena, of course. Very nice. Raleigh, North Carolina. Hi. Very interesting. So you see this word cloud going. All right, cool. Thank you. Now, tell me, do you know where I am coming from? This is a map of Europe, so let's go. Let's see where you're going to pinpoint me. Ready for results in, let's see. Okay, coming from Ireland, England, a little bit in the north, France. Well, before I show the results, nice to meet you. I'm head of expansion at WooClap, and we are from Belgium, the tiny little country in between France, Germany, and the Netherlands. All right, now that we're warmed up, let's get started and take a peek into your student's brain, guys. So I think this image might let you remember some things about your own study habits. When I was a student, I did not pay much attention to the way I was studying for my tests. I was using a methodology which is, to this date, the one that is largely used by students, which is rereading and highlighting, of course. And of course, occasionally, I was cramming. Maybe that sounds familiar to you guys. I was certainly guilty of that, but I had good grades most of the time, so I was confident that I was doing the right thing and that I was actually learning efficiently. But guess what? I was wrong, and my methodology, my color coding skills were in fact not effective at all. So later on, I found out that those techniques were actually studied by a group of researchers in 2013, Dinlowski and Rawson and others, in a paper that is called Improving Student Achievement. And now let's see what I learned from that. So, more specifically, the ones that I was using and the ones that most of the students are still using were actually proven to be of low utility. So the highlighting here, the rereading. And in terms of learning, this has a very, very low utility. So why is that? Because they're in fact very passive approaches, and they tend not to activate our brain and our neurons, which is very important in learning. So let's get back to our brain and the actual process of learning. Because when you learn something new, you change. And more specifically, in order to learn something new, your brain needs to change. And of course, the brain can change at any given age. This is, of course, called neuroplasticity. So when we acquire new knowledge, neurons become more strongly connected, which creates a stronger network and allows the neurons to communicate with each other faster and more efficiently. So meaning that if you want to learn something new, you need to create neural pathways. And of course, researchers like to compare this process that is happening in our brain to a forest. So I want you to take a walk with me through the forest right now. When you see a dense forest and you want to go from point A to B, being able to create a path, you have to go through the branches, the weeds, multiple times over and over again. So first you will create a trail, but the more you walk through the trail, the wider it's gonna be, right? So eventually, if you keep walking and working, this trail will turn into a paved forest road with stairs, for example. And this is exactly the same with your neuron pathways. The more you activate groups of neurons, the stronger the connection and the network. So in our brain, to create those connections, we need to activate and stimulate the groups of neurons that are associated with what you want to learn simultaneously and repeatedly, okay? So quickly, if you stop walking the path for a while, nature will take over, of course. And this, again, is the same with our brains. It is called forgetting, guys. So I guess this is where my mathematics from high school are now, deeply covered in weeds. But you can see the techniques I was using as a student were in fact very, very passive. So going out of the forest, back to the brain again, at WOOC Lab, we work with higher education teachers and professional instructors. So we thought by giving them insights on how their students will learn best, they can adapt the way they're teaching them. So based on research, of course, we uncovered 3 effective techniques and very interesting techniques to study efficiently. And these techniques I'm going to share on the next slide. So the 3 techniques are, firstly, practice brain activation, very important. Secondly, space your study periods. And thirdly, having a growth mindset, the belief that one can improve. So we're going to dive in and taking a deeper look into the first strategy, which is activating your brain. So how do you foster brain activation? In this study here that I'm showing you on this slide by Zeram and Rodinger in 2010, 3 groups of students were asked to prepare for a test using 3 different techniques. Group A had 4 study periods, and by study we mean rereading, highlighting, etc. And they have 4 test trials. And by test we mean mock exams, so I'll practice recovery the material they study and asking questions. Group B had 6 periods of study and only 2 test trials, and Group C had 8 periods of study and no test trials. So let's see the results. So here we can see that answering questions is more effective than periods of study. So the more active way to learn is to practice tests. So when you try to remember the content. So in most educational situations, both teachers and students make a sharp distinction between learning and assessment. So learning occurs when students read their textbooks, listen to lectures, take notes, review their books and their notes. And students' learning is assessed from time to time by the requirement to take quizzes, tests, exams. So teachers and students think tests are like dipsticks dropped into the students' heads every so often to measure what they have learned, but without having any effect on the process of learning itself. So, but in this case, the brain was activated. And that is where I want to take you to. So let's check why this is more effective, because in another study by Vestergren and others in 2014, a similar experiment was run, meaning students studying and student practicing testing or answering questions, and they took the brain scans of students, where we can see that the two regions are far more activated when you try to remember your content and when you try to answer the questions. So those regions are key to learning and memorizing, and it is a sign that people are encoding information and knowledge. So, how do we practice brain activation? Firstly, practice recalling your study material. Secondly, repeat the tests and the exercises. And thirdly, of course, prepare questions and practice answering them. And fourthly, do it with a classmate, study together, ask questions, and be upfront with it. Okay? So this was for the first strategy, brain activation. Let's take a look at the second strategy we're going to dive into, the spacing of study periods, also called spaced practice. So, all right, it's basically having a study schedule spread out on several days, like you see here. Let's take the 3 students on this slide. They will spend 4 hours to study a certain topic, here. The first one is going to study for 4 hours the day before the exam. And that is what we call cramming, massed studying. The second one is studying 4 days before the exam and 1 hour a day. So this is more spaced out. And the third student will only study for 30 minutes, but over a span of 8 days. Now, let's see how taking breaks and having that spaced study sessions is beneficial. We have more brain activation. That is the thing. So in this experiment by Callan and others in 2012, they asked 2 groups of students to study English vocabulary. Episodes 1 to 4 that you see here represent the study periods for both groups, okay? So the analysis over the combined periods, the episodes, from 2 to 4, shows a significant activity in the key regions of the brain, but only for the spaced and not for the massed condition. And of course, this is not a good thing to see that you have a decrease in brain activity. It means that the neurons are not connected and are not consolidating. So less activation and less consolidation of information. A second benefit is that when you take breaks, when you sleep, your brain is silently continue to work for you. So most of the memory consolidation in our brains happens at night. So the retention of newly learned study material can be enhanced simply by taking a nap after a session. So in this experiment here, by Anthony and others in 2012, 2 groups of students were told to learn to play a piano melody with their left hand, being right-handed. One group took a nap, the other did not, and they both took a test afterwards. Of course, no surprise here, they performed better than the group that did not take a nap. And what is fascinating is that during their sleep, the sleep spindles, thus the brain activity, were larger over the cortical regions contralateral to the hand used to perform the melodies. So this is really, really nice to see. A third benefit of spacing your study periods is that you'll learn more and you'll forget less. So in the Cornell experiment in 2009 that we can see here, two groups of students were compared. On the x-axis, you have the conditions, so masked versus spaced studying. And on the y-axis, you have the proportion of information students were able to recall when they took the test. And the materials were getting to know the 4D synonyms within the English vocabulary. So those kinds of experiments validate the forgetting curve that I'm showing you here on this slide, which was theorized by Mr. Ebbinghaus in the 19th century. The forgetting curve is a mathematical formula that describes the rate at which something is forgotten after it is initially learned. So the idea is over 100 years old for now. The downward slope of the forgetting curve can be softened by repeating the learned information at particular intervals. So this curve is actually showing how information is lost over time when there is no attempt to retain it. So how can we space study periods? How can we actually set in place this technique? Study more often, but of course in shorter periods of time. Do not cram. It really does matter. Do not cram. Sleep, which is very, very important, and have a study schedule, all right? Try to put that on your students. Okay, let's go to the third final technique that we're going to go over today, and that is having the belief that one can improve. So having a growth mindset. Having a growth mindset is the opposite, of course, of having a fixed mindset. A fixed mindset will say that, okay, I'm either good at it or I'm not. I can either do it or I don't. Whereas a growth mindset will think in terms of, hey, if I fail, I see an opportunity to grow. So my effort and my attitude is determining my abilities. The challenges that I am able to overcome will help me to grow. Okay? It's like Henry Ford said, whether you think you can or you can't, you're right. So thinking like this has definitely consequences in our brain, and your mind is a very powerful tool. Let's check another experiment here. Conducted in 2010 by Moser and others, two groups of people were supposed to identify the middle letter of a 5-letter series, where sometimes the middle letter was the same as the other 4, and sometimes it was different. So it's pretty simple, doing the same thing over and over, but the mind can't help it. It just kind of zones out from time to time. And that is when people are making mistakes and they notice it immediately and then they feel stupid. So when someone makes a mistake, their brain makes 2 quick signals. The first is an initial response that indicates something has gone wrong. In this experiment, Moser calls it the oh crap response. And a second signal is the signal that indicates that the person is consciously aware of the mistake and is trying to right the wrong. So both signals occur within a quarter of a second of the mistake. So people who think that they can learn from their mistakes did better after making a mistake. So in other words, they successfully bounced back after an error. So their brains are also reacted differently, producing a bigger second signal, the one that says, I see that I've made a mistake, so I should pay more attention. So again, more activation in the brain, which is very, very important. So a little recap here. So how are we able to improve or grow mindset? Having more motivation, or should I say motivation. I can improve myself, I really can. Having more perseverance, if it's difficult, okay, I have to practice more. If I make mistakes, I can correct them by paying attention. Thirdly, using the word yet. I'm just not there just yet. It's very different from having a fixed mindset. And of course, the fourth is the process of praise efforts, which is very, very important. So I'm very curious. Let's see, oops, if your brain was active or not. And I hope you might saw some tips up there, but who is able to tell us what are the 3 strategies to study efficiently? So you can reconnect here or refresh your page if you was already connected. And let's see what the results are that you are going to hand in. Spaced study, exactly. That's one of them. Growth mindset. Activate. Let's hide it a bit just to let the other people think a bit more. Do we still have answers coming in? Okay, just going to leave this open for a little while because guys, you can win some mood coins here with your answers, okay? 5. Just waiting a little bit more. Very curious to see. And this is also something that is very effective, asking an open question at the end of a session just to see where your audience is at. So let's take a look at the results lists. I see lots of good things. Of course, let's check the correct answers and let's see who won. Okay, so Bob has the first place. I see that second is actually shared by Horton and Lindsay. So first place wins 45 mood coins and second place wins 30 mood coins. This is going to be distributed, guys, after the presentation, all right? So thank you for this. Exactly, summary. So practice brain activation, space your study periods, have a growth mindset. And this is, of course, what we also can do with WooClap. You can teach differently. You can check the level of knowledge at the end of your course. You can return regularly to important concepts. You can question your students to activate their brains, and of course, motivating your students and showing that they are progressing. The same for our second platform, WooFlash, which is based on spaced repetition, self-evaluation, and feedback. All right, so if you'd like to know more about WooClap or WooFlash, you can leave your email addresses if you'd like. And this is actually a big thank you to you for your engagement with my presentation. And I hope that you've enjoyed it. And if you'd like to ask me some questions, please do.
And yeah, if you want to ask a question, you can just unmute yourself.
Or put it in the chat. That's also good. Don't worry about it.
And I guess, will you be at the vendor sessions that we have today?
Yeah.
Yes, of course. I'd love to.
So
Right,
I'm wondering how you guys just did that poll. I just got on a little bit late. Oh, I see. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And if ever you have other questions, do email me at annalise@wooclub.com. I'd be happy to answer them. And of course, for the rest of the sessions, I wish you lots of enjoyment because I think the program is still going to start for you. This was a morning session. It's afternoon in Belgium, so you still have a full day of enjoyment ahead of you guys. It is exactly possible to give a tour of WooClap and WooFlash. It's not in the Mountain Mood sessions right now, but I'll be happy to, if you send me an email to annelies@wooclap.com, I'd be happy to make sure that we can arrange a date and time for us to take a tour together in the interface of WooClap and WooFlash. So I hope then, Ray, that this is a response to your question.
Yes.
I think the copy of the PowerPoint, I'll make sure that you can find it in the Moodle course that we've set up. I'm going to upload it there in PDF form.
And there will also be a recording of this session that will be added to the site that you'll be able to get to later.
All right. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Alban.
So I guess I've got a question for you. You know, I know a lot of the educational literature has talked about, being able to do these in presentation or in lecture questions, polls, whatever you want to call them. Do you know if there have actually been actual psychological or cognitive studies showing that actually benefits?
Yes, yes. And for there, once again, I'm not the brain specialist here, but we're working with our in-house data scientist, Florian Zinoni, who is actually regularly posting on our blog about those scientific studies that actually argument the fact that using open questioning for about 10% of your lecture time, which will actually nourish the fact that students can get their information into the long-term memory. So if you actually go to our blog sections, you will be able to see that this is something that is fairly argumented within the scientific realm. Yes. I hope that answers your question.
Yep, thanks.
And if some of the guys are interested, we can go and do an exit and do a little quick demo session on WooClap, as we still have a few minutes more, right?
Yes.
So here you can find yourself within the infrastructure of WooClap. And you have actually 3 different tabs. You have a voting tab, in which we find ourselves right now. You have a messages tab, and you have a participant page section. So the voting tab will allow you to create different types of questions, ranging from multiple choice to polling, find on images, ratings, word clouds, as we just did for the icebreakers, finding a number, more mathematical questions, as we also support Asimat and LaTeX coding. Excuse me. And also much more going to brainstorming and even script concordance testing, judgment concordance testing, which is fairly used within the medicine world, let's say, and also audio and video. And how it goes, you actually simply click on a question you like to create. This will be your question. This would be your category 1. This could be category 2, and so on. And then you just hit the save button, or you put some extra settings on the right. And then what you are able to see is that this will list at the end of your list here in this session. We did already have created some questions, and it will be listed in a chronological order, what you've been able to create. on the voting tab, you also can add a presentation. So you can import it from your computer in PDF, as I did right now. You can import it from PowerPoint on Keynote or Google Slides, but also the other way around, which means that we have an add-in for PowerPoint and one for Google Slides, and also much more, which is then in terms of video conferencing tool, of course. So you create your questions, you add your presentation, and then, of course, you can insert your questions. And how do you do that? You just take it, as I did for this session, and just drag and drop where you want it to be. I'm not going to do this right now because I have done it already. And you can take notes like I did. So you are able to open a presenter's view screen if you present and have your notes with you. All right. Then you hit the save button and then you go back to your interface. When we see the second tab here, messages, you're able to activate the wall, allow likes on messages, and allow images. And then students can see, so if you reconnect to the same link here, so wooclap.com/mountainmoot, you'll be able to see a little chat button like this here on your smart devices, and you can send me some messages if you'd like. And you can hit display, you can add the wall to Slack if you use Slack, you can export the messages to Excel, you can reset, you can do lots of things with it. Then going to the participant pace section, this is where actually you have the asynchronous part of WooClap. So with the asynchronous part, we mean that they can study on their own. So as a teacher, you can actually create a questionnaire here, which is the same interface as we were seeing in the voting tab. So you can just create your questions as I showed before. You can add instructions. Then you hit the save button. I'm not going to do it right now because I already have some. Then you can choose to publish it right now or later. And you can, for example, copy the link to the questionnaire and put it on your LMS, on your Moodle, and communicate that to your students. Furthermore, this is widely used when you're having a session, for example, on a certain topic next week, and you want to know how the students are reacting to that topic right now. What is their level of knowledge right now? So you can then adapt your learning accordingly, of course. And you can add some files here. So this is also a great way to give them homeworks or maybe to do a little test. All right. And then, okay, next to the 3 tabs, we do have some other settings. So we can choose to authenticate the participants through email, social login, or the SSO of your university. Right now, I have enabled the participant username. You can also choose to just do it anonymously. You can choose to set the results visible by default, which I've done for several questions, but not always. And you can have the little I'm confused button. Let's see how that works. So if I restart my presentation again, you see that, oh, and that is, can I, yeah, good. You see that I have a little I'm confused button here. So when you see that you have a session with, I say something 30 students, and you see that 15 are confused on that particular slide, you know as a teacher that you should address the concept once again so they can get rid of their confused button, or you can reset it. So this is actually the thing that they do not need to raise their hands anymore. I've used the competition mode to know if for the last question I posed that I would be able to see who won, so I could distribute the moot coins. And of course, you have some more settings here. You can actually have your logos. You can show the slides on the participant devices in real time or asynchronously. I can share this event when I enable this, and I can just share the code so you can import it into your own WooClap. You can use timers. You can also use timers for questions, etc., etc. And also you can do lots of things with the Moodle exports. And if you have enabled the authentication per email, each participant can have their own individual report also. And about that reporting, that's also one section that I can show you guys, is the reports results into Excel or into a grid. Let's check how that looks. Oh, going back, sorry. And then you can actually see that, okay, these are the ones that have filled in my, my session, and I can have a scoring also. And then of course you can have a report in a more PDF form. It's nicer, let's say. You can recheck all the questions you've posed. You can recheck all the answers you had. I had some in there that, yeah, so, and here we did some likes on the answers that we're giving. So this is a reporting section in PDF, and you can also export it to Excel, of course. So that's a little quick tour of WooClap. So I hope that you've enjoyed it, and really do not hesitate to contact us and to ask for a more in-depth tutorial, or to dive into WooFlash, because I do not have much time left to dive into Flash, because that is a platform where we're going to stimulate the students into their revisions by the use of digital flashcards. And there you have actually the option to create courses. Students can create courses with you. The teacher can create courses. They join it. You can follow up their evolution, and you can actually see their spaced study periods, and you can actually see where some specific student has a little bit more challenges, or where you can help as a teacher to get them through there. And this is also something that we're going to set up for September, and you will be able to have lots of free trials on that platform too. So really, I'd be happy to get you on some free trials of that. And do check, of course, the Mood store, because we're offering a 6-month free trial of WooClap in the store. So please spend your coins, I'd say. And of course, still here for any of your questions you might have. I see that Catherine said, so I've been using the PowerPoint add-in so I can still have the animation. Exactly. So when you're going to use PowerPoint, or your PowerPoint uploading within WooClap, we're going to convert it into images. And that is why we have opted for the PowerPoint add-in, so you can still have your animation indeed. You're welcome, Linda.
All right, it looks like the questions have tapered off. So I want to thank you,
Exactly.
Annalise, for the lovely presentation. Up next within the conference, we're going to have Wes Fryer giving a keynote at 9:15. So you have a little bit of time to go and take a break and get ready for that. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. Thank you, Jeff, for the introduction. Bye,
Yes.
everyone. Have
Bye.
a nice day ahead.